Well, hello everybody, and hello Nate.
Hello, Greg. Hello to all the people out there on the internet watching us. Welcome once again to the real version of What's This Bird live. If you're watching on Facebook, you might have seen
Yeah,
a hastily aborted version come through. Thank you, Facebook, for making things 10 times more difficult than they actually need to be to put a live show on. All of that notwithstanding, moving on, we are going to talk about birds
moving
and
on.
birding. And yeah, moving on. Hold on, let me turn off. I've got my sounds on. There we go. Um, yeah, welcome to What's This Bird Live. I'm Nate Swick. I'm here with my ABA colleague Greg Neise, and we're going to talk about birds and bird identification here, as we usually do normally every other week. You might have noticed that we were not available last week, which is normally our schedules, because I was in Philadelphia at a really fantastic event co-hosted by the American Birding Association and the Drexel University Academy of Natural Sciences. It was part of a lecture series they do. We had a wonderful panel that we put together to do a why do we love birding sort of event. So that's why I was not able to meet with Greg on our normal 1 p.m. Eastern time Friday bird identification extravaganza, but we are here 1 week late, but no less interested in identifying birds. Greg, how are things with you
Hello.
these days?
things, things are good. Things are good. It's that wonderful time of year in the Great Lakes where it just can't decide what it is. So it's like April one day, and then it's October the next day, and then it's August one day, and yay!
I'm sure the birds don't mind that at all. It's been an interesting spring. We are coming to the end of it. It is, if the photos in What's This Bird are any indication, it is
Yeah.
we're very strongly in baby bird season for What's This Bird, which in the past we have not really handled a lot of baby bird stuff. A lot of that stuff, baby birds are very difficult to identify. But I will make a small shout out to a recent guide that came out just earlier this year that helps to identify that for you. So all you folks out there trying to identify baby birds, check out the.
See, I love it. I love it when you reach back through time and space to grab
That's right. Yeah, I can't even see it because I've got my background on, but it's called Baby Bird Identification, and you can't see the background is being stupid. I have to hold it like in front of me. You bright, you can't even read the words. Baby
Yeah, it's
Bird
disappearing into the
Identification
picture behind you.
by Linda Tuttle Adams. It just came out from Princeton University Press. It's a
Oh,
field guide
nice.
for all your baby bird questions. It's got all of them in here. You can't see it. I don't know why I'm showing it, but yeah, that's where to go if you want to identify baby birds. So rest assured, your questions can be answered in a book, as they have on bird identification questions for time immemorial. Hello to everybody watching. It's great to see some friends and regular listeners with us. I hope that the time change, the schedule change, didn't keep too many of you away. But we're gonna try and keep to this every other week thing going on, starting this week, unless something else comes up. But for the foreseeable future, it looks pretty good that we're going to be coming at you every 2 weeks here at
Yes.
1 o'clock Eastern time. Is that? Yep. What do we got, Greg? What else we got to talk about, Greg? Do we have any other
Uh,
ABA news and whatnot to do?
well, we got a couple of comments here already in Facebook. Chris Ortega says he likes your Rufus Hummingbird shirt. Uh, do they? I suppose he means we. Make a Northern Mockingbird shirt.
See
Or
what you
do
did
they
there.
do that? No, wait. Or do they do that? No mo.
No mo. Well, we don't
Yeah,
do the Ruhu ones no mo either. So it was an
he's
old
pulling
bird
a
of the
Nate
year shirt.
Swick there. Chris
Yes, I
Ortega is
appreciate
pulling
that.
a Nate Swick there and
Taking my
succeeding,
job,
I should
Chris.
say. Yeah, well, if you ever need somebody to fill in, you know who to call.
I do
Um,
frequently.
and Heidi McCulloch, hi Heidi, says that last year was Grosbeak Palooza. This year, not one at the feeders. Yes, this has been, you know, when you've been doing this for a long time, every spring is different. The wind patterns, the temperatures. This year for us in the Western Great Lakes, it's been very dry. It's been unseasonably warm, and except for really for migrant traps, like Montrose Point, which I talk about fairly frequently here, and some of the other places along the lakefront, it hasn't been that great compared to other years. And I think a lot of birds got pushed to the west by
Yes.
easterly winds early on, and a lot of others just like sped on through. And that's something we talk about quite a bit here, is how
Mm-hmm.
in the spring birds are on a schedule and they don't stick around, and in the fall
That's
you
right.
can get something, you might get the same yellow-rumped warbler that's in your backyard for 5 days, but
Yeah.
not in the
Connecticut
spring.
warbler will hang out at one spot for like a week and a half in the fall. They definitely do not do that in the spring. They are all hopped up on hormones and feeling like they have to get up on territory as soon as possible. Yeah, and I agree with you, Greg. Looking at all the maps that showed the, Birdcast does a great job showing you when and where and what nights the bird migrations are the heaviest. And it seemed like to me that most of the brightest bird migration was up the Mississippi River. We talked about this a couple last time we did this, I think.
Yep.
And yeah, it was lighter here in the southeast where it has been an exceptionally wet spring, or at least wetter than normal. It feels like. But yeah, these sort of things are from year to year changes in the weather are I mean, they move stuff
Well,
around, and the birds are to some
that's part
extent
of
able
what
to
makes
take
it so
advantage of that.
interesting. And that's
Hmm.
part of what makes birding so interesting, is it's all part of this big matrix of parts, moving parts, and trying to understand it is challenging but a lot of fun. We it's been an interesting spring here for vagrants,
Hmm.
and unusual birds, especially along the Chicago lakefront. Um, the easterly and northeasterly winds that were prevalent during much of May knocked down shorebirds on the lakefront that we don't usually see.
Mm-hmm.
So we had, Hudsonian godwits, marbled godwits, all kinds of shorebirds and things
Yeah,
that.
snowy plover, didn't you?
We had snowy plover is a weird overshoot. They show up every once in a while in Illinois, um, and it's almost like one of those semi-expected overshoots. But Hudsonian godwit, no. I mean, it's
Yeah,
just not a bird you see on the lakefront. You see it out in the farm fields further to the west and along the Illinois River Valley. But
yeah, they're very much inclined to keep to their migration routes, which in the spring are straight up the middle of the continent, right up the they're right up the
yeah,
Great Plains to that corridor of Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, Dakotas, all the way up to the tundra, the prairie provinces, and then in the fall, sometimes you
exactly.
get them blown eastward a little bit. I know that whenever we have hurricanes, sometimes they arrest them and may have them make landfall well inland, which is always very unusual. I think they're one of those birds that has that really weird oblong migration pattern where they actually take off in eastern Canada and fly all the way over the Atlantic Ocean. So those hurricanes that make landfall in the southeast sometimes blow Hudsonian godwits that have been migrating over the ocean into shore, which is
Yep.
kind of cool, to think about.
Yep. So, yeah, basically, what we do here is we have pictures from What's This Bird, the Facebook group, and we pick a few of them to talk about each every other week. But also, we talk about whatever you want to talk about. So, if you've got something you want to bring up, a question, or just something to say, or just say hi, drop it in the comments on Facebook. I'm watching, Nate's watching Twitter and YouTube, and we'll involve you in the chat here.
Absolutely. I want to say hello to the friends over in the YouTube channel, Buddy Campbell from Beaufort, South Carolina, Jim Neitzel from Olympia, Washington, who's the cedar waxwings arrived in force. I don't usually think of them as a spring migrant, but have an East Coast bias on that sort of thing. So they must be
Mulberries.
mulberries. Yeah, the mulberries are blooming and the waxwings
When
are there.
when the mulberries fruit, the waxwings are there,
Yeah, so
just like
hello to all
magic.
of you there. As Greg says, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, please leave them in the comment section. We'll be sure to get to them. We love talking about birds. It's not hard to get us off on a tangent. So if you want to try that, feel free to do so.
Absolutely. And well, what do you think? Should we just jump into some birds here, or
Yeah, let's talk
we
birds.
got?
I think we vamped long enough.
All right. So this first one comes to us from Alabama,
Alabama.
and the person who posted it, if I remember correctly, opined that it might be a olive-sided flycatcher, an olive-sided flycatcher, and that's actually a really good. That's a really good guess.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about how she got or how they got to that place in that spot in the first place. I mean, what we're looking at
Yeah.
here is a perching bird, a medium sized, maybe a little bit small sized perching bird. The thing that stands out to me is sort of that teardrop body, really big head, really kind of sturdy bill shape, and especially that posture, that kind of upright posture, which when you see that, it screams flycatcher, although there are certainly a lot of flycatchers that don't do that, that do other things. But most of the flycatchers here in the ABA area in the U.S. and Canada definitely show that kind of upright posture and big-headed look. And once we're down to there, sort of thinking in terms of Impidinax flycatchers versus Contupus flycatchers, which are Impids are sort of that large group of vexingly confusing flycatchers that are found all across the continent. Some things that Impids typically have that don't make me think Impid on this one is that most Impids tend to have a bigger eye ring than this bird. This bird does not show much of an eye ring at all, and they tend to show a much more. A little bit of an eye ring.
Willow flycatcher can have
Willow
a face
flycatcher is
that
probably
looks
the one
kind of
that's
like that.
Yeah, but I would expect to see much bolder wing bars on a lot of the Impids, and this bird doesn't show those at all.
One other thing that's it's subtle, but it's noticeable when you know to look for it is what's the genus name?
Contupus.
Contupus. Thank you. They have ridiculously small feet. They have like these little swallow. They look like swallows often, and that along with the general shape and color of this bird, I think we can narrow it down to that genus, which is peewees. Oh yeah, there we go.
People are talking about it in the comments and YouTube. The new Cinti Lee Andrew Birch field guide to Impids and peewees that just came out this year. Fantastic, wonderful little book. I'm pulling out all my books today.
Yeah, it is a wonderful book.
But yeah, so, I agree with you, Greg. This definitely is this looks like a Contupus to me, or however you want to Contopus, however you want to pronounce it. I don't really know. I don't speak Latin. So which going back to the person who talked about it is the genus that includes both our peewees, both wood peewees here in the ABA area, and also olive-sided flycatcher. So it's a good guess that you might think that this is olive-sided flycatcher.
And it's not an olive-sided flycatcher. It's an eastern.
It is not an olive-sided flycatcher. Yeah, but that's you're not far off. You're not far off.
No, you're close, and you can see here in the comp I put together just how close they are. The differences are subtle, but once you see it, you really can't unsee it. And olive-sided flycatcher is a differently shaped bird than an eastern wood peewee. And again, like I said, it's subtle, but once you see it, it has a bigger head. It actually has kind of longer wings, and it has a shorter tail. So
yeah, which makes the longer wings and the shorter tail look more exaggerated than they actually are.
Precisely, and it gives it this kind of big bull-headed kind of look. The back coloration, and especially the head, tends to be darker. And in this pose, olive-sided flycatcher almost always shows white tufts at the top of the rump. So like where the wing feathers join the body at the bottom of the wing, going down from the bird's head. And sometimes they're incredibly noticeable. They look like big white saddlebags on the back of the bird. Sometimes they're not so noticeable, like in the one I chose here to compare with. But the other thing, there's a giveaway here, is the habitat, the situation that this bird was photographed in. Yeah. And it's in the foliage, it's deep in the woods. And in the inset there, you'll notice that's an olive-sided flycatcher showing the front, where you can see the olive sides, that sort of dark vest. But that's how you typically see an olive-sided flycatcher. It's up at the highest point.
Almost always. Like I was in Panama last fall, and so we were there in September, and so we were seeing a lot of northern hemisphere migrants heading down towards South and Central America. And we saw olive-sided flycatcher in Panama every single day. And guess what they were doing, Greg? They were sitting up on top of a bare limb, just like they do here. They were doing it, on those bare cecropia limbs in the tropics. It was the weirdest and coolest thing to see that they do exactly the same thing, no matter what time of year it is.
Absolutely. They got their niche and they stick to it. And, and when you look at the picture, the inset picture of the olive-sided flycatcher there in the against the sky, you see that shape. It's got this very swallow-like
Hmm.
shape with a
Yeah, for
broad
sure, like a
shoulders
martin.
and a
Yep.
very narrow bottom. It's almost triangular. I kind of call it like a Dracula shape, and it's unique. And then that peaked
Hunt
head.
eats their flying insects.
It's again, it's very subtle. Compared to this is not a yellow rumped warbler in that sense,
No.
but once you see it you can't unsee it. And
Yep.
so yes, this is an eastern wood pewee. The bird in the center is the bird in question. The
Yep.
one compared with it to the left is an olive-sided flycatcher, which this bird is not.
Yeah, a lot of
Tim
eastern wood pewees in
Callback.
the eastern forests. Eastern forests right now. They are actively breeding. They're actively singing. You hear that kind of pee pee call all
Yeah,
over the eastern part of the any forested area anywhere in the east right now. You're gonna probably hear that. A lot of eastern wood pewees around. They breed
absolutely.
throughout the eastern half of the continent. I mean, they are breeding in Alabama and they're breeding up in Canada, so they're all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tim Callback on Facebook says that he's seen a couple of examples of eastern wood pewees showing white tufts behind the wings.
Mm.
And I mean, yes, that does happen, but it's not very common at all. And it happens. But then, as with so many other birds, with these flycatchers, you're looking at gestalt. You're looking at
Yeah,
the total
yeah,
package.
and it goes to show that you shouldn't base an identification on a single field mark. You should really be looking at the whole part of the bird, and that includes, as Greg says, a lot of the gestalt that is quite different when we're talking about peewees versus olive-sided flycatchers, which are just big peewees. To be honest, they should be called boreal peewee. That's a better name for them. But
Yeah, they should.
the
Joe
bird
White
the
Smith.
bird that you would be most want to get a drink with, I think.
Exactly. Joe White Smith on Facebook asked, "Can we compare Eastern and Western wood pewee?"
Oh boy,
That's a bit of a
that's a
longer
thorny
conversation
one.
than we have time for here,
Yeah,
because that's there's
Paul
there's there's
song.
multi-page articles written about that.
Yeah, because Western wood pewee is probably one of those birds that is a stealth vagrant, or in the east, especially in the winter, in the colder months. If you see a wood pewee in, I don't know, November or December, then chances are it might be a Western wood pewee. Unfortunately, those do not call very much, or they don't sing very often, so it's really hard to
Right.
get sort of an idea of which one it is. But there are some pewee spuz I know in the southeast in the cold months that definitely have some questions about them. But that's a tough ID.
That's a tough ID, and
Yeah,
I'll put that in the notes to bring it up sometime when we get the opportunity.
do
But
an
that's
entire hour on wood
we
pewee
could do an
identification. We'll have
entire
three people
yeah. We'd
watching.
lose everybody after the first 20 minutes of it. But okay, this one comes to us from Braddock Bay, New
What
York.
a cutie!
It
What a
is a
cutie!
cutie. Look at that, and we can tell, I think, right away from the size of the branches and leaves and everything around it. You see some red osier dogwood in the back there, so
Hmm.
we know this is a pretty small
Pretty
bird.
small bird. Yeah.
Um, and the
Not a
thing that
lot. Sorry, go ahead,
go
Greg.
ahead.
I
No,
was going to say
you go
not a
right ahead.
lot, not a lot to make on this bird, but the lack of field marks is also a field mark. So we're looking at a bird that does not have any appreciable wing bars. It does have that pretty strong eye line. It's got
Hmm.
kind of a dark cap. It's got a pretty thick bill, pretty sturdy bill, but the angle that we're looking at it is going to make any bill look a bit more sturdier than it actually is. But I get a sense that this is not some dainty little warbler bill. This is actually something with a little more heft. Um, yeah. So what are you thinking, Greg?
I think we may have diverged on. This is one of the times where I think we may have
Oh, really?
diverged on what we're
Oh, you
thinking
think this is
here.
a warbler?
I do.
It probably is, since you put these together.
I do. Well, I don't remember what it was decided. What was decided on
See, now
in
I'm
the
second
chat
guessing myself
on What's This
because
Bird.
this is where I get
So
fooled by looking at these birds for the first time, like literally 3 minutes before we go online.
well, the
Because
thing,
I'll be honest, I think the angle is sort of what's throwing me off here. Because I'll lay my cards on the table. I get a very Philadelphia Vireo vibe from this bird, and if it's not a Philadelphia Vireo, please make the case that it's not.
well, all right, it's I'm looking at the color of this bird's back,
Okay.
and now I'm gonna have to reach over and grab
Yeah,
it. See,
I know.
can
I'm
do
gonna
it
grab
here.
my field guide.
I'm gonna grab a field guide too because this is one of the
Which
this,
one? We'll look at two
this
different field guides. Which one are you grabbing? You getting Sibley?
I'm getting Sibley,
Okay, I'm gonna get Nat Geo.
and yeah, so we've got the thing that's kind of throwing this off may be an apparent lack of wing bars here, but it kind of it does have some kind of white fringing on the wing panel there. The thing that sticks out to me here is
Okay.
the coloration of the back. It's a weird kind of blue-green color. And
I agree with you on
has-
that. It is sort of
that
weird,
has-
and so you're thinking cerulean warbler, right?
So Tim Callback says, I'm assuming the cerulean-like coloration can't be trusted. Well, I trusted it, and
Yeah, I don't know.
I
That's a good question.
I think this is I think this is a female cerulean warbler.
It doesn't have any
um,
wing bars, though.
Well, it kind of does. It kind of does.
I mean, it kind of does. Kind of.
And but we can't see it. I mean, we can't really see the wings that well. But the color of the back and the way that kind of fades to a little bit of greenish as it goes down, that weird kind of aquamarine-ish. It's got a pretty
No,
strong
I agree.
eye line.
I see it. I see it.
It's got a pretty strong eye line. I mean, the two choices for me were black-throated blue or cerulean. I think in New York,
I don't think it's a
especially-
black-throated blue. It doesn't look like black-throated blue to me.
It doesn't look like a black-throated blue to me either, and we can kind of see that the crown is that male cerulean blue, and it looks like it even has a little streaking in the crown.
No, I give you that. I give you
and
that.
all of that.
And
to
I'm
me-
looking at the bill, and I would like to see. I'll be honest. The bill is sort of what held me back for Philly Vireo because I would like to. I think the bill is sort of. It looks heavier, but I think that's sort of the angle that we're looking. At
I
this
agree.
bird. Because most of the birds have much wider bills than we give them credit for because we're looking at them straight on for the most part.
And I see what Tim says
I want to
about-
see like a thicker bill. I want to see thicker, more through the bill. Like it does sort of taper off a bit more like a warbler than it does like a Vireo, which is more like a baton with a hook at the end.
Yeah. Well, two things. The feet don't look gray from what I can see, but we can't see very much.
Can't see it very well.
And
I don't know if I
Vireos
can
all
give a
have
lot
kind
on
of
that.
middle gray. That Kodak
Yeah, kind
gray.
of bluey kind of stuff.
And I believe that on Philadelphia Vireo, the bill would be a little more grayish too. Tim mentions that the face pattern is pure Vireo. That cerulean would flare to the rear, and
yeah.
again, this bird is.
I mean, I can see.
is-
I could go both ways on that. I
the
could go
angle
both ways on that.
angle and the way the bird's head is turned, that's getting foreshortened
Exactly.
and smashed. I think that, well, if we had another picture of this bird in a different pose, it would be immediately
It
identifiable.
would be
This is one of
immediately.
the things
Oh
that we-
yeah, if we were is this in the field, we would there would be no question. We'd get
question.
it in a second. Yeah.
And this is one of those pictures that we talk about fairly regularly here, where identifying a bird like this from one photo is very tough. We had another one in the group this week where I looked at it and it sure looked like a white-eyed Vireo to me. And I got fooled by it had kind of heavy gray legs and feet, and that was the number one thing you could see. Well, it was an
Single
orchard
colour.
oriole. They posted another picture.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it was an orchard oriole.
That's why
I'm
we
like,
need multiple
yeah,
photos.
Orioles and Vireos have very similar looking legs and feet.
They do.
Um,
Put your cameras in burst mode, folks. Just go and do it right now. Just get your cameras, put it in burst mode, And that way, every time you hit the shutter, you're gonna get like 3 or 4 images. It's
Yeah.
so
Now,
weird how this photo is taken in such a way that all of the relevant field marks are obscured.
right. Well, and it also has the throat. Now you could be construing that as the
Yeah.
yellow of a Philadelphia vireo, but female cerulean warbler has that
Yeah.
strange
No,
buffy
I agree with you.
underneath. Aaron Maeslish says that if this is a spring bird, cerulean would have fresh wing bars.
That's what's told me. That's what's
Yeah,
holding me up
but
there.
how many times have we been fooled by a first year female that doesn't in the spring?
To
Anyways,
have to go to Macaulay Library and look at
I'm going
specifically search
cerulean
for
warbler on this one. If it turned out to be a Philadelphia vireo, yeah, I could see
wings
that.
are really long. Those wings are really long.
They are. Um,
Weird.
and look at the primaries. Those aren't fresh. Those are beat up. Look at the primary tips. I don't know. I still this just looks like a cerulean warbler to me.
I could buy it, but my first
So
impulse, my gut impulse, was Philadelphia Vireo when I first
Yep.
looked at this photo. And I usually bird with my gut for the most part, and then kind of walk
Yeah.
myself back, which is it might be what I'm doing on this bird. But yeah, good one, good one.
Yeah. So
Where
thank
this
you
is
for joining
live
us for
live bird identification, high wire,
Absolutely.
no net.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of What Happens Inside Records Committees.
Yeah, right. Except all by email.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on here.
We got Lori Conrad says I'd call this a female cerulean myself. Yeah, you may well be right, Lori. That's in YouTube.
Now, as you
Anyway,
said,
great. All right,
it's baby bird season. And this comes to us from Washington State, and this is one of those pictures that if you know, you know. If you don't, it's baffling. But if you know, you know.
Looks like a gremlin, like one of those. They fed it after midnight, and
Yep.
yeah, this is what you end up with.
So it's obviously a baby bird, or is it? I think it's a bird in a nest. And it's got little look at how round the egg is that's next to it there, the white egg.
Right.
And also look at how just terrible this bird is at building a nest.
That's a field mark
The
too.
adult
right
birds are
there.
just really no good at building nests, and
No.
that's a big clue right there.
Yeah, and it's super goofy looking, and it's got kind of a big, weird bill.
Look at the snout.
yeah.
Exactly.
The snout. Yeah, it's a bird that nests frequently around people, so people are going to encounter it quite a bit. They are very bad at making nests. Their nests frequently get blown out of trees during
Yep.
strong weather events, or even sort of moderately strong weather events. As I said, they're very bad at building nests, but it seems to work for them because there are so many of them around. This is one of the pigeons. Someone suggested rock pigeon, which is a really good guess. This is a mourning dove to me. Rock
Yes.
pigeons, as far as I know, do not really make a nest of any sense. They sort of just lay their eggs on under overpasses or on bare ground and stuff.
They do, but
Do they?
living in the land of rock pigeons in downtown.
You can speak to it more than I can, Chris.
It seems like rock pigeons build their nests out of whatever sticks and garbage they can find, using less of it than mourning doves, but using a lot of their own poop to sort of build a ring
Yes.
around. And it's like there's always, it seems to me, a lot of bird poop in a picture of a rock pigeon nest. So yeah, this is a mourning dove, and you can see that the bill, the way the top of the bill sort of flares and the nostrils point forward, it appears that is pure pigeon. So you've got a dove or a pigeon if you see a face that looks like that.
Yeah,
And also
they're little
the round
gremlins.
eggs.
They're little gremlins. They do not they do not look like birds when they fall out of their nests. And this is a good opportunity for a public service announcement that if you see a bird like this who's fallen out of its nest, or it has you see it on the ground, please try to get that bird back into the nest if you can find it. In the case of mourning doves, that's not always the case. Even if you put like a small platform up into a tree, just keep it out of range of cats and whatnot, and put the bird on top of that platform. For the most part, the adults are going to be able to find it and continue feeding it. Mourning doves lose a lot of babies falling out of trees because their nests are so poor. But if you can get it back up in the tree where you found it, that's the number one thing to do. The old myth that birds refuse their young if they smell humans on them is generally not accurate. Pick the bird up, put it back in the tree. The adults will find it and continue to feed it.
Yeah, and a little bit just to expand upon that too. It is now the time of baby birds hopping out of nests and doing what they do, which is look like they are just absolutely helpless, but they are not. If you find a baby bird on the ground that's got feathers on it, 99% of the time, the proper thing to do is just leave it alone. If it's on a sidewalk or in a street or something, get it off, get it into some cover. But for the most part,
get it away from people
do.
And cats. Yeah.
So, all right. So we've got a mourning dove here in there. Typically,
Laura Leffler asked in the Facebook comments, how do we know it's not a white-winged dove? Good question. I don't really know
because
where
it's in Washington State.
They don't have white-winged doves up there yet?
No.
All right. There you go.
Yeah.
Cindy Jones says,
it would be the first
mourning dove. It really is.
It is a good nest
like a pro architect mourning dove. This
is the Frank Lloyd Wright of mourning doves right here.
There you go.
Absolutely.
It's going to arrow Sarnin, but that's better. Yeah.
Okay. Moving along. I love this one because I love fake out pictures, and this one is really good. I mean, it took me a while to even figure out what we were looking at here.
Yeah, no joke. There's some weirdness going on here. This is definitely a wetland bird. It's in a bunch of marsh plants and sort of thinking that it's hidden for the most part. Black back, big white side. If there's more than one color on it, then it's probably a duck and not a goose or a coot or not a goose or a grebe or a coot. So this is definitely a duck. It's mostly dark there. I have a suspicion as to what it is with the black back and the white side, but I love that eye peering at us. Like
I think your suspicion is correct. But what fooled me about this is the way that the leaf in front of the bird's face, where we think the bill should be. So it took me a while looking at this. Let me back up. The bird's facing to our left, and it has its bill buried in its back feathers as ducks that are sleeping do. At first I thought this bird was facing to the right and kind of looking down, but it's not. It's facing to the left, and the bill is hidden. So now we can see the back of the bird's head, we can see a bright white flank, and we can see a black back. And those three things add up to male ringneck duck. Is that where
exactly?
You went?
That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
So if we're thinking scop, which is another very similar diving duck that could potentially be seen in this sort of situation in this place, they have a gray back with like these sort of really neat kind of wavy vermiculation pattern on the back. So you wouldn't have the black back here. The only other diving duck I can think of that has like a white side and a pure black back would be like tufted duck, and that would be, well, I mean, look, we're seeing the back of the head, we'd see the tuft.
That's exactly why I said we're seeing the back of the head. We know it's not a male tufted duck,
because and it's kind of like that weird kind of swoopy pattern too. That's more of a ringneck duck thing than a tufted duck, which is more like a big old blocky rectangle.
Exactly. And if you really use your imagination, you can see the little dark shoulder spur coming down just barely in the very front there. But yes, if this was a tufted duck in this pose, we would definitely see the tuft. It would be pretty obvious. So how do we separate common goldeneye? Would show some white above that in the dark, the black above that white flank.
Yeah, and I
And
think we'd probably see a little bit of the pattern on the face too, like a little bit of that white spot
you
that they
would see a
have.
little bit of that white.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and the head's a little bit different. Like this kind of big old rounded head on the back really says ringneck duck to me. Common golden, I don't know if you probably noticed it. Like they have like triangle heads. It's
They do.
weird. They're like that's how you tell them from at a great distance. Is that even when you can't see anything else, you can see that the head is sort of shaped like a big old triangle. Common golden eye, at least. Barrows is a little bit different. But yeah, this has sort of a more rounded crown, rounded off the back. Even though we know, if you've seen a ringneck duck, as many of us have, they do kind of have more of a peaked head. My thing just fell on my ear. Um, but yeah, the head shape, the general shape of the bird itself does not say common goldeneye to me. But
Yeah, I mean, a
thanks for
resting
bringing that
common
up,
goldeneye has white in the folded wing panel above the white flank.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe
Piano
we
keys,
would
as
see
Chris
that.
Ortega sells it. That's great. Piano keys, I like that.
Exactly. That is a really good way to describe that. So yes, we have a male ringneck duck here.
Ringer.
And all right, moving right along.
Moving right along.
From Quebec.
From Quebec. All right, so I'm going to throw back to the very first bird that we had in this in our series when I talk about this one. I talked about how a lot of our North American flycatchers have a very distinctive posture that they take on. It's very upright. The tail is dropping down below the branch. The head, it's almost vertical compared to some of the other birds we see. And though the angle is slightly weird on this bird, I definitely get a sense of that sort of verticality in this bird that we're seeing here, which, in addition to all of that, has a very dark back. It's got some borders, some white borders on the flight feathers there, on the scaps and on
pretty
the
much
secondaries
all
that
of
we
the
can
flight
see,
feathers.
pretty much all of them. It's pretty white underneath, and I'm looking at that tail, all dark with a bright white terminal band right
Dipped
at the
in
tip.
paint.
Dipped in a little bit of primer.
Yeah, so there's your screaming field mark right there.
Exactly.
Is that white terminal band on a black tail, which really only one of our songbirds has that I can think of. And that's
Two
Eastern
of them, but
kingbird.
it wouldn't. Yeah, Western kingbird has a white terminal. Does it? Western kingbird has a white terminal band too.
No, it has white outer tail feathers.
White outer tail feathers. There's another.
I mean,
this
it
is
can be.
another one of
It
the
can be. I
kingbirds
mean,
that has
the
them.
fringe in the end can be kind of pale, but it's not bold like this.
No,
and a
not at
Western
all. Not
kingbird
bold like this.
would show a little bit of yellow, I think, on the left, and the back
sure.
would be a bit
For sure.
paler.
And it wouldn't. The head would be a lot different from the back as well. The back and the head's a little bit darker here, but for the most part, it's all sort of dark. Cassin's kingbird. Cassin's kingbird has a white terminal band, a thin one though.
Oh yeah, and that's
That's the one I
hey,
was
Cassin's
thinking
kingbird in Quebec.
That'd be a very good bird.
Yeah,
very
that
good
would be so that would be something. I think that would probably be a first provincial record. Although
Probably.
actually Quebec
Probably.
has two of the best lakefront birding places. Well, at least one of them. And for vagrant as far as vagrant traps, so they might actually have a Cassin's kingbird. I'm not sure, but that would be an extremely rare bird
Be a
in
very
Quebec.
good bird. Can't have more than 3, I bet.
And it would also show some yellow underneath, and I believe the back would appear grayer, like not so kind of slate colored. It would be lighter, and even with the white terminal band on a Cassin's kingbird, it's not as well defined as this. I mean, a lot of times it's hard
Sometimes
to
you
see.
can't even see it. Yeah,
Exactly. You have to rely on other
good old
things to
Eastern
identify
kingbird.
that bird.
Greg, am I wrong in thinking you could even see a little bit of the little crown, the little splash of color on the crown, or am I imagining things? On this bird?
I don't know. It's hard to tell. Being so backlit as it is, it might just be some image fragmenting.
Yeah, that's probably what
it's hard to tell. All right, this one comes from another Canadian bird here. Comes to us from Sarnia, Ontario.
I wish I'd paid closer attention to this one. Yeah, so what are we looking at here? We're looking at a very small bird.
We're
looking at
a
it's very thin black, dark bill. Maybe a hint of a
Yeah.
wing bar on that thing.
I think that looks like a yeah. We can
More of a
see a
hint. More of
we
a
can
hint.
more. I think I see
More than a
more of
hint.
a hint
Yeah.
there.
And dark lore. Those are the things that are standing out to
Very
me on this
dark
bird.
lures. I see a little bit of greenish yellow color on the forehead.
Yeah, I'd give you that.
Um, it's got kind of a nice, uh, clean underparts.
Oh yeah.
Now
Nothing
it,
much
it
going on there.
looks. We can
You see
see
a
the
little bit of the
tail
tail pattern
pattern.
too. Yeah.
We can see the tail pattern, and that tail pattern. Once you become familiar with them, that tail pattern just screams warbler. That
Yeah.
mostly whitish with black outer. The patterns in the various warblers are different, and often key. But many of the warblers have that kind of a tail pattern. Um, and so I think all the things are here. One other thing to note that is a really subtle field mark that is look at how behind the eye it's whiter than it is almost everywhere else on the face, and I don't think that's not something weird going on in the image. That's on the bird. So we're gonna jump to a little comparison here of what I think this bird is. Um,
Can I guess? Let me give my thoughts.
oh, sorry, too late.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing I didn't.
Is that what you were gonna guess?
No, it's not. It's not, but I think you're right. Yeah, because well, I was looking at the wing. I was going to point out that the wing bar looks like it's not white, but in fact yellow, and I don't think that's just shine from the leaves there. The
I
wing bar
agree.
there does look yellower than the white on the underparts. But
I agree, and
yep.
I think this bird is a first year female chestnut sided warbler.
Yep.
Female chestnut sided warblers have varying amounts of they're like diluted. The plumage is like the males, but it's diluted and broken up. But we can see that kind of yellow green crown. Now the bird's head appears to be wet and it's molting. The big, broad, dark lores. There's only a few things that it could be confused with, and that's a young male American redstart would be a good place to go with this one if that's what you thought. But the tail pattern rules out redstart right away because redstart has a very unique tail pattern with.
Okay.
Yes.
So I've got a thought, Greg. I'm going to ask you your opinion here.
Yep.
What
Go
rules
for it.
out a female Brewster's warbler? The hybrid of
Yeah, I know
blue-winged
what you're saying.
and golden winged. Just saying it for the benefit of the audience out there. Because that was sort of one of what I was sort of thinking. I was like, wow, how did you get this? How did you get that bird? Because and then you put up the chestnut-sided warbler. I'm like, yeah, that's probably it. But it doesn't have the kind of thing underneath the eye. It doesn't have that big mask. It looks a little Brewster's warbly to me. Are we doing this again?
Well,
Are we?
we're doing this
Are we?
again. This is a good
We're doing
one.
this
Is a good
again.
one. And
I will say Scott Hickman said in the YouTube comments that we actually learn more when there is a disagreement. So yeah, there you go.
yeah,
I'll let you think
you
about
know
it.
what? I don't think
Tim Callback
I
says
don't
it's a
think
chestnut sided. I'm willing to go with him. I
think it's-
I'll buy a chestnut sided. I'll buy it.
I think- well, a
I don't
couple
have
of
any sort of
things-
real argument. I'm just throwing this out here to be the devil's
No, I get
advocate.
it. I get it. I get it. I think a
Because
couple
hybrids
of
are the devil's birds.
They are, and I think a couple of things. One, that white patch behind the eye at sort of between 3 o'clock
Yes, I
and
agree. I
and
see that.
6 o'clock. That's real, and that's there.
I wouldn't necessarily. You wouldn't necessarily want to see that, or you wouldn't necessarily see that with the Brewsters. Yep. I
You
agree.
wouldn't. And the bill shape.
And yeah,
Golden Wing and Blue Wing have this really sharp,
fair point. Yep.
almost conical bill. Yeah, this just I again, we always have to caveat if there were other pictures of this bird, it would be slam
Easy.
dunk. But I think that it's a. I
What's
think
a
that this
Brewster's
is a-
warbler undertail look like? Great point, and that's part of the reason why I pulled out one of my favorite warbler guides, which is the. Oh my god, my background is being so weird. It's the Peterson Field Guides Warblers by John Dunn and Kimball
Yeah.
Garrett. It's got this really great plate in it that is all the undertails of all the birds that I have referenced on many, many occasions. I think that the Whittle Stevenson, the warbler guy that was put out by Princeton University Press a few years ago, also does something very similar. It's really useful. I'm finding it right now. There it is. And I'm looking at chestnut sided and I'm looking at both golden winged and blue winged. I said gold would be sort of a golden wing. They're both very, very similar, so I don't know if that really helps. They both have mostly white in the middle with kind of a little bit of black on the outside. So
Yeah,
of,
and we
of
don't
all
see
the warblers, they're probably the two that are the most similar, to be completely
Yeah,
honest. Chestnut
that's
golden winged. So that doesn't help.
Yep, yep. Okay, so I'm comfortable leaving this with a female chestnut-sided warbler. I think I would call it a first-year female
chestnut-sided warbler. Yeah, I think that's probably it. But in situations like this, with a photo like this taken at such an angle, it's worth considering some of the other options.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's two. I think that's the first time we've ever had kind of these sorts of discussions with any of our birds.
Well, picking some.
Yeah, you got some good ones.
I had a lot of time yesterday because I got whacked by a virus early in the week, and I lost all track of time and space this week. And I thought yesterday was Friday.
Well, so and also I didn't help when we did our Columbia thing on Wednesday night, right. And I said, tomorrow we're doing What's This Bird, not realizing that it was, look, once the clock turns over to 5 o'clock, my brain turns to mush. So
I got up and got this all together yesterday, and when I realized it wasn't actually Friday, I took my time and I spent more time digging through pictures than I normally do to get these. So I think I'm gonna if I can try to start doing these a day before so we can pick and choose the images a little bit more than we often do.
Yeah, maybe so. We get more of this hot disagreement content that everyone loves so much.
Okay, here's
this one we're on the same page on, I believe.
Oh yeah, we're on the same page here. Okay. This one comes to us from Texas, and it was well, look what do we got? It's a bird in the grass.
We got a shorebird, Greg. It's got a teardrop shaped body. It's got a head without much of a neck. It looks like it's got a pretty thick bill. It looks like it's wandering around in some wet grass. It's kind of tall. Everything about this says small calidrus sandpiper to me. It's screaming it. I can't even hear so much.
Tim Callback points out that this is not a cerulean warbler.
Thank you, Tim. No wing bars.
Tim is one of the people who helps the most at What's This Bird, and this is one of the reasons why, because he can identify things at this level.
That's right. Notably not a Philadelphia Vireo either.
And definitely not a Philadelphia Vireo.
Or a Brewster's
warbler. The primary projection is too long.
For starters.
So, if you look through the field guides, there with the small calidrus sandpipers like this, they're quick to point out a couple of species that have long wings.
Yep,
and
for sure.
that stick beyond the tail. And there's two species really that are that are to choose from here. And if you look at this bird and you look at the long wings and the scaly pattern on the back, you might be lured in one direction. And you might be lured in the wrong direction by that. So what we see here is there's some subtle things to note. And the one that sticks out to me, the one thing that I look for when I think I have this species, and again, this is sort of rambling around here, but this bird's plumage is it's these birds are molting. They can be a bit ratty, but we see some markings on the flank. This bird is holding its wings in a way that we can see the flank all the way down to the undertail coverts, and we see these little markings, little sort of chevron triangular shaped markings going all the way down the side of the bird, and that's the key field mark here. Shall we go to the comp? Or
Yeah,
do you want to
indeed. So
call
we're
it?
talking about two bird species here. Baird sandpiper and white-rumped sandpiper both are moving through the
Exactly.
center part of the continent this time of year. So this is the bird in question, and Greg has helpfully posted the other one, the other species in question, right to the left of it. The thing that stands out to me here is kind of the very contrasty streaks on the breast of our mystery bird here,
Yep.
compared to sort of the buffy wash that we see in the comp photo here, which means that our mystery bird is likely a white-rumped sandpiper, and this comp here has helpfully showed us what it looks like when placed alongside a Baird's sandpiper, which are both sort of long, very long distance migrants with very long wings, and they like this sort of marshy grass and walking around that as opposed to on the mudflat proper. So you both find them in sometimes the same sorts of places, but yeah, that sort of buffy wash versus the very just concrete black, dark and light streaks and the markings on the side of the flank there definitely make this mystery bird look like a white rump sandpiper to me from what we can see.
Yeah, and Aaron Maisel asked, do either of them molt in migration, though? Um, I'm not sure, like, what is being molted during migration.
Body, I
I
think,
picked
mostly.
I
The
picked for the
flight
comp
feathers
I
already
picked for the
clean.
comp a Baird sandpiper from May,
Mhm.
and it typically the you can sort of see the Baird sandpiper scaly pattern uh, that is pointed out in the field guides. Um, but those things can vary. The things that really stand out here to distinguish Baird's from white rumped is you can see the Baird's has just a clean white flank all the way from that buffy sort of breast and chest all the way down to the undertail coverts. It's just clean
Mhm.
white. The overall color and tone of the Bairds, as you pointed out, Nate, is much more buffy.
Mhm.
Um, and the white rump sandpiper has more of an eye line. The
Yeah.
Baird
Yeah,
sandpiper, the face,
or the cap, depending on which part you're focusing on. The
yeah,
cap is
depending,
more
yeah,
obvious on
exactly.
it too,
Baird
because of
sandpiper
the eye
kind of
line.
reminds me more of a buff-breasted sandpiper. It's
Yeah,
got
yeah,
that
for
kind
sure.
of open, buffy face
Yeah.
look, whereas white rump sandpiper looks much more like like a semi-palmated or a
Mhm.
western or
Yeah.
sort of in that genre of birds.
This photo doesn't show
Um,
it, but in the fall you get to see the juvenile Baird sandpipers come back through the continent,
yes,
and they are one of the most distinctly marked shorebirds there are.
absolutely.
They're just absolutely gorgeous with this beautiful scallopy. Like you can kind of see the scallops on the Baird sandpiper on the back, but those edges are just like really pristine on a young Baird sandpiper, and it's very very obvious what you're looking at. Very cool bird.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that's. I don't think
Do
we
we
have
do? We
another
get to the
bird
end of the
here.
birds.
I'm not. Let me double check. But I think we may be at the end of the birds here,
Putting
and
my field guides back.
we as I said, if you guys have anything you want to talk about, drop us a comment here in Facebook or on Twitter or on YouTube. We are watching all of those, and we'd love to talk about whatever you would like to talk about. But I'm going to take a little point of privilege here and talk about something I want to talk about, which is
Let's do it.
our annual summer fundraising drive, which we call our nesting appeal. And I think back to when I was a teenage birder in Chicago, and a scene like this, it didn't happen. These are all teenage birders at the ABA camp, Delaware, out birding at a birding camp, which is one of the things that the ABA does that I think is one of the most amazing things we do, and one of the things I'm most proud of. I mean, I love all the things we do, but but our young birder program is one of the greatest. And when I was a kid birder, there was maybe 5 of us in the entire Chicago area, and we didn't have clubs, we didn't have um, any of the resources that young birders have today. And when I look through the staff of places like, oh, you know, Cornell or some of the other big institutions, museums, guiding companies, and so on and so forth, I see so many alumni of the ABA Young Birder program.
Yes,
And
for sure.
we have a mentoring program where kids can uh, participate in different modules and learn things from experts such as how to keep a field notebook, photography, poetry, writing, all of these things. And we had nothing like this when I was a kid. I so wish we did. And so we, at this time of year, ask you to help us support our Young Birder program. Um, and Nate, you've actually led some of these programs.
I helped out with one in Costa Rica a few years ago. I'm actually an alumni of ABA Young Birder programs back when I was a
Yeah.
young birder in the mid '90s. There weren't very many birding camps out there, but there was one that was run by Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours in conjunction with the American Birding Association called Camp Chiricahua, which is actually still goes on today. It's an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for young people to go and bird in southeast Arizona in the late summer, which, as many birders know, is one of the hot spots of the ABA area and one of the best places for birding and also just general naturing there is. And I tell you, it was a life changing experience. It sort of in some ways set me upon this path that I'm in now. And funnily enough, one of my co campers at that 1994 Camp Chiricahua was none other than your pal Greg, one JB Brumfeld. I knew JB when they were a like a 12-year-old birding phenom, and I remember at the time even
I
thinking
know.
that they
I've
were
seen pictures. I've seen
fantastic.
pictures from.
Yeah,
I've seen
and there were
pictures,
there were a
and
few other folks there as well, but JB is the one I remember. JB from Ohio. But it's funny, as Greg says, so many of the people who are in charge of major birding initiatives in this country now are alumni of the ABA's Young Birder program now, and it's just creating new birders, and it's a great program to support. It's one of the things that we're most proud of here at the organization that we do. And as
absolutely
Greg says, throw us a few bucks
birding
for the ABA's
leaders,
nesting season appeal. Please do so.
conservation leaders. I mean, here's one of the kids doing a project checking prothonotary warbler nests as part of the ABA Young Birder mentoring program. And we really are building the future generation. And I don't know. I know how you feel, Nate, because we've discussed this. But birding is a way of life. I mean, I when
Yeah,
you get it, I should have inserted a little clip of The Mandalorian. This is the way,
this is the way.
because it really is. And birding, I feel, makes you a better person. It makes you more aware of your surroundings. It enhances a whole lot of different skills, and it gives you a sense of empathy towards um, all living things, and making sure that everything has a place to live and can thrive. So we ask you at this time of year to help support our nesting appeal. If you go to our homepage, which is aba.org, let's see, where are we? Here we are, aba.org. Right there up front, you will see this big red button. Give it a hard smash, and give till it feels really good, because you are supporting what I think is one of the best things we do, and I think one of the best programs of its kind anywhere.
For sure. And we are coming up against 2 o'clock, Greg. So I guess we will say goodbye to all the folks that have joined us today. Thank you so much for tolerating our discussion. That's a friendly way of putting it. It's always discussion. It's always good discussion
There's
here.
always
We'll
a
be back in a couple
discussion.
weeks. If you're interested in keeping up to date on when we do these, please go to the ABA website and sign up for our Flight Calls newsletter. We usually put a note at least 24 hours in advance when we're about to do these presentations, and we would love to have you back and to get you in on on the newsletter so you know about all the other cool things that the ABA is doing. We are just finalizing an ABA community weekend in San Francisco in a couple weeks, the
Yes.
weekend of the 15th and 16th, 15th and 16th, I think, or 17th. I don't know the dates exactly, but right around that area of June. I will be there. I'll be out in San Francisco going birding with a few folks. Please check that out
Yep.
on the ABA website. The ABA podcast is weekly. The ABA What's This Bird thing is every other week. Greg, I forgot to tell you, I should have mentioned this earlier. When I was at the Philadelphia event last weekend, I heard from as many people said that they watch our What's This Bird thing as I heard from about the podcast. So we are saturating the market here. So thanks to all you folks that
Right
came up to talk to me if
on.
you're watching today. And
Yes,
yeah,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if you like this program and all the other things we do, and
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
biased, I think, but I think that the ABA podcast is the best natural history podcast out there.
Well, Apple says there's a bunch of Bigfoot podcasts above
aba.org/join,
us.
become a member. You can, get in on ABA community and all sorts of other things we do, and we would love to have you. So
Absolutely. Join the club, join the ABA, join us in a couple weeks when we do this again. Thank you, everybody.